So let us start with our prayer, as we always do. We elevate our thoughts to the spiritual realm, and we offer to all our brothers and sisters there the opportunity of joining us at this moment for our studies, our Sunday studies, and today those of the Gospel. We ask for the presence of our spiritual benefactors, that they may bless us with serenity, with guidance, that we may find strength and courage in their words, in their teachings, for us to face all the challenges of this reincarnation process. We extend all these blessings to all of those who are in need of education and consolation. And today in particular, we ask for blessings, special blessings, to all mothers in this world, to all those taking care of others, being responsible for others, for their upbringing, for the formation of their characters. To all of you, our immense thanks, our reverence, our love. And with this in mind, we ask our spiritual benefactors for their permission to start our meeting. So be it. So as João said, today we have the Gospel according to Spiritism, and we are going to look at chapter 6, the Consoling Christ. Christ, the Consoler, actually. Chapter 6, and we're going to start at the very beginning. And who's going to read for us?
Okay, I'll read.
Oh,
Lula.
okay. Thank you.
Okay. So we're on page 127, the easy yoke. Come on to me, all you who suffer and who are overburdened, and I will comfort you. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me that I am gentle and humble of heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Matthews. All types of suffering, misery, disappointment, physical pain, loss of loved ones, find their consolation in faith in the future and in trust in God's justice, which Christ came to teach humankind. On the other hand, upon those who expect nothing after this life, or who simply doubt, afflictions bear down with all their weight, and no hopes comes to soften their bitterness. This is what led Jesus to say, "Come unto me, all you who are weary, and I will comfort you." Nevertheless, Jesus places one condition on the assistance and happiness he promised to the afflicted. That condition is found in the law that he teaches. His yoke is the observance of that law. But this yoke is easy and the law is gentle, since it imposes love and charity as a duty.
Thank you. Okay. So in this chapter, Christ the Consoler, what we are basically looking for is consolation. There are parts of the gospel who are more on the education. There are parts of the gospel who are more on consolation, and other parts that are a mixture of the two. Here we're going to deal more with consolation. So in this particular chapter, in this particular item we just read, we see in that first part, when we see here, "Come unto me, all you who suffer and who are overburdened, and I, Christ, will comfort you. Take my yoke, and you will learn from me that I am gentle and humble of heart." So the idea here is that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, that no injustice, no difficulty, no vicissitude lasts forever. And that we are going through it for a reason. We're not going to be discussing the reasons here. This is not part of the chapter. But what Christ is saying to us is that whatever the reason is, there is this light at the end of the tunnel. He is this light, the promise of the end of our sufferings, of an ending to our sufferings. And then what we see in the explanation, we see the idea of reincarnation. Imagine how difficult it must be if when we do not believe in reincarnation, when we only look at one lifetime, because then everything we go through is much more difficult for us to face those things. And why is that? Because even if we see it at the very end, even if we see an end to it before the end of our lifetime, before the end of our life here, we might think of all of that time as wasted, since we don't think of a continuation. So the reincarnation, the concept of reincarnation, is not only positive in the sense of our behavior towards the difficulties, the way we face them, but also in keeping the flame of hope alive. Because we understand that whatever we are going through at any moment in our lives, whichever difficulty we are bearing, there is an end to it. And whatever we have done, learned during this process of vicissitude is only going to strengthen us. Even if the process takes this entire lifetime, we know that it will end and that we are going to continue living afterwards. So it's in this that lies the consolation. The fact that no suffering, no difficulty is eternal, is forever, and that we always learn from the difficult moments in our lives. And these teachings, this guidance that we receive from the difficulties are only strengthen us for the continuation of our lives. Anyone has any questions?
I think the greatest consolation of all is the invitation on itself. Is Christ letting us know that I'm here for you, just come to me. And if you come, don't worry, because my yoke upon you, because my Father is light. I'm not asking much from you. Don't be so concerned. Don't be so worried about all your past, all your vices, all the wrongdoings. I'm here for you. You can just come to me. The invitation itself is the greatest of the consolation.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
when you see through his gospel as reported by the evangelicals, Christ never went looking for someone. He waited when people came to him. At least I don't remember seeing the whole gospel that Christ went for someone who is in need of help. But was there always available when they come to him. And when they come to him, said, he would ask, what is it that you want from me? Although he sent his disciples to go and knock and spread his word, Christ himself doesn't invade the free will or the privacy of anyone, but awaits patiently for you to come, but gives the invitation. Regardless of who you are, what you have done, come to me. Come to me and don't be worried, because my burden is light and my walk is easy.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Zoraida,
Yes. Okay.
go ahead.
The promised consoler. If you love me, keep my commandments. And I will pray to my Father, and he will send you another consoler, so that he may remain with you forever, the Spirit of truth. whom the world cannot receive, because it neither sees him nor knows him. But as for you, you will know him, because he will remain with you and will be among you. But the Consoler, who is the Holy Spirit, whom my Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and will enable you to remember everything that I have said to you. John. Jesus promises another Consoler, the Spirit of truth, whom the world does not yet know because it is not matured enough to understand him, and whom the Father will send to teach all things and bring to remembrance what Christ has said. Therefore, if the Spirit of truth must come later to teach all things, it is because Christ has not said everything. If the Spirit comes to bring to remembrance what Christ had said, it is because it has been forgotten or poorly understood. Spiritism has come at the stated time to fulfill Christ's promise. The Spirit of truth presides over its establishment. It calls humans to observe the law and teaches all things by enabling them to understand what Christ said only in parables. Christ stated, "Let those who have ears to hear." Spiritism has come to open eyes and ears because it speaks without figures or allegories. It lifts the veil intentionally, left over certain mysteries. It has come finally to bring supreme consolation to the disinherited of the earth and all those who suffer, attributing a just cause and useful purpose to all pain. Christ said, "Are the afflicted, for they shall be comforted." But how can we bless suffering if we do not know why we suffer? Spiritism shows that the cause lies in previous existences and in the destiny of the earth, where humans expiate their past. It shows them the purpose of their sufferings as being salutary crises which led to healing and which are the purification that ensures happiness in future existences. Humans understand they deserve to suffer and they find suffering to be just. They know that this suffering aids their progress and they will accept it without complaining, just as workers accept the work that will ensure their wages. Spiritism provides them an unshakable faith in the future, and bitter doubt no longer falls upon their soul. It enables them to see things from a higher point of view. The point of earthly vicissitudes is lost in the vast and splendid horizon that Spiritism contemplates, and the perspective of happiness that awaits them gives them the patience, resignation, and courage needed to follow their pathway to the end. Thus, Spiritism accomplishes what Christ said about the promised Consoler, the knowledge of things that enables humans to know where they have come from, where they are going, and why they are on the earth. It is the call to the true principles of God's law and the consolation through faith and hope.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Okay. So here we see in the passage and in the explanation the advent, the appearance, the foretelling of a consoler in the sense of someone or something that would come later on after Christ to reiterate all the teachings that he left us. One might ask, why is this so? Wasn't Christ's teachings complete? Wasn't Christ's teachings correct? Well, that they were correct, we have no doubt. Were they complete? Here we can debate whether they were complete or not. It is very reasonable to think that they were incomplete, but not incomplete because Christ could not fulfill his mission or because Christ was not completely prepared, but because we were not prepared enough. We would not have understood him had he told us everything that he knew. So we see that we had to mature with the beginnings, with the principles, with the first things that Christ brought us, and that at a later date, we would be more prepared, matured, we would have grown up morally, intellectually, to such an extent that we would be able to get something more, that learn something more, build upon a foundation. Christ laid the foundation, a solid, absolutely correct foundation, a foundation that is so sturdy that we have not been able, with all the manipulations of his words, with all the dust of 2 millennia, a foundation that is so solid, we have not been able to conspurcate, to damage, to destroy. The foundation is there, it's solid. But the problem is, do we want to use this foundation? It's up to us. In this idea, we also see that the Consoler would come to reiterate what Christ said, because some of us would have forgotten it, some of us would have conspurcated it, perturbed it, deviated from it, changed it for our own gain, and sometimes just out of pure, sheer ignorance. So the Consoler was necessary, continues to be necessary. The Spirit of Truth, in this sense, is the idea of returning us faithfully to the path that was laid for us by Jesus Christ. It's in this sense that we see it as the Spirit of Truth, the one who knows the truth in its absolute meaning, not like the human truth or scientific truths, which are only incomplete, partial truth, because we don't know everything, we have not reached perfection. So it had to be a spirit so much more evolved, morally in particular, and intellectually than all of us, to be able to carry this truth back to us, as Christ once did, at the level that we found ourselves then. But the Spirit of Truth now comes and uses the foundation that Christ laid out for us and expands on it. The concepts of universal love, of charity, were always there from the very beginning. In this sense, the Spirit of Truth, in what we now call the third revelation, and for us Spiritists, we consider Spiritism as a third revelation, as the advent of the Consoler. Spiritism does not change, the third revelation does not change anything that Christ left for us in terms of the universal love, in terms of charity. Quite the opposite. It reminds us, because we have forgotten quite a lot of the teachings of Christ in those two aspects. But it also brings us new concepts, expands on some of them that Christ touched only ever so lightly, such as the concept of reincarnation. And this is what we see in the next page, when at the very beginning it says, how is it possible for us to honor suffering if we do not understand why we suffer? We have to be very careful with this sentence, because it does not mean that we are asking for all the details why we are undergoing this, that, or another difficulty at the moment. It's not that. It's the famous what for as opposed to why me. If we are going through a difficult moment, we are going through a vicissitude, a difficulty in our lives, the idea of honoring this suffering is that we should always be asking, what am I gaining from it? What am I learning from it? Not necessarily why me, why am I the focus, the victim of this difficulty, of this vicissitude, or even, for instance, why does it have to happen to me now? Because, Jean, if you can move on to the next page, please. In the next page, it says very clearly that we are here to expiate our past. Notice, third line, right in the middle of the third line from the top, where the destiny on earth, where humans expiate their past. If we are expiating our past, it's not an imposition. It's something we did some time ago. Whether we like it or not, there is no way we can get around this. It's the law of cause and consequence. So our afflictions today have an origin in our actions, in our behavior, in our speech, in our thoughts from a long time ago, or even a recent past. We set to motion everything, the consequences that led us to go through our present state right now. Nobody else. There are no impositions, no injustice is actually coming from God towards us. God loves all its children and wants its children to grow morally and intellectually and reach perfection. If we believe, truly believe that God to be absolutely just and good, we cannot imagine that the difficulties, the vicissitudes we go through, the afflictions, actually stem from it. They stem from our behavior, our past behavior. But notice how interesting what Christ says. Blessed are the afflicted, because they will be comforted, for they will be comforted. Now, this means that here, as we go through the difficult moments in our lives, it's not for us to judge ourselves or others, but to help one another. We are here to learn. So we can also dispense blessings, consolation, education, comfort. All of us are capable. There are other parts of the gospel. I'm not going to go into the details so that we don't deviate too much from this topic. I'm just going to mention the part that is important for this particular chapter. There are other places in the gospel where we have questions about whether we should help a criminal, for instance, or someone who's temporarily evil. As we always say, no one is evil forever, we're only temporarily evil. And the gospel is always very clear. If we have the ability to assist always with an open heart and filled with the gratitude for the opportunity. So we are also the ones now in this chapter, we are the ones afflicted. We're the ones going through vicissitude. And Christ says that we are blessed. We can, as Elmo pointed out in the previous part, we can ask for assistance, and assistance will be given. Knock, and the door will be open to us. But they are not going to invade our privacy to provide this assistance. We have to ask. But if we do ask, we will be blessed with some form of assistance. And this assistance will allow us to honor this difficulty, this suffering, because we'll be seeing it as an opportunity for growth, for learning, for improvement. We will not see it so much as only suffering, but rather as this opportunity, as I mentioned, for learning. All our crises then will become salutary, healthy, when we approach them from this perspective, because we will know that we are being followed, that we are being guided, that we are being strengthened and encouraged throughout that moment, so we can start our healing, our own healing for, for hurts, for injuries, for wounds we cause to ourselves because of our misguided behavior at some other point in our journey as spirits towards perfection. We should see these difficult moments as opportunities, as I said.
Mm.
And when we see Spiritism here, we have to remember that it's not to overturn the gospel. It is not here to say that the gospel was wrong or to add things to the gospel. No, it is here to re-explain, to explain again everything, all the teachings that Christ left for us that we have forgotten somehow, that we have pushed aside because of our pride, our envy, our our own prejudices, our own unchecked ambition, or that we never understood in the first place because simply of ignorance. Spiritism adds to the gospel in that sense, but does not change or modify it. The foundation that was laid by Christ was solid enough, and we should always remember that and try to keep our compass in the north, pointed to the north, pointed to charity, pointed to universal love, even when we are going, and especially when we are going through difficult moments. It's through our patience, our resignation, and our courage that we will find the end of all our torments, all our afflictions, all our difficulties. With them at our side, with Christ at our side, with the spiritual benefactors at our side, when we knock at their door and ask them to assist us, and when we are also open to their assistance. Because sometimes we ask for things and they will give to us what we need, but because we want certain things and we want what we want and not what we need, we sometimes do not obey, we sometimes do not heed, we sometimes do not pay attention to all the assistance that they are providing. So we miss an opportunity of growth. So we need first to ask, and also, and most importantly, have the humility to accept that they know better, that they are more evolved than we are, both morally and intellectually, so that they are more prepared to provide to us what we need at that moment, not what we normally want. And if we do this, there will be consolation, as Christ promised in the first part of the easy yoke, the light yoke. We will go through the difficult moments. That is true, because without the challenge, we do not grow. But we will grow, we will go through it, through the affliction, through the vicissitude, with a light heart, knowing that we are guided, that we are supported, and knowing that there is a reason for it, and that what we are doing, instead of saying expiating, let us say this way, that we are correcting our path towards God. Any questions?
Julio, I'll ask a dumb question.
Yes?
We've gone through 3 revelations, right? You have Moses that brought the law. Then you have Jesus that came to explain it. Now we have Spiritism. And still, but we know we are not perfect and we have millennium years, thousands to get to where we should be. But what's going on in the world now, it shows how much importance and need to work and work and work and work, and yet we keep falling. And we're not perfect, but sometimes I just get stuck in that. Do we need another revelation? How many do we need? What? So you explained it so beautifully now. I understand, but I still say the work that's ahead, and I know that just like Elmo explained it so beautifully, all you have to do is ask, and he's there for you. And yet, you see what's going on now. It's all a lesson for us to learn. I understand that. But I shouldn't even say but. You explained it clearly. I don't know.
Well, Sarayda, the truth is, we speak of three revelations. These are the three major ones.
Right.
These are the ones that are very hard for us to ignore, let's put it this way.
Mm-hmm.
They have, in some ways, left their imprint in our history, in the history of humankind, of humanity. But there have been thousands of them. If we think of the prophets, if we think of some intellectuals afterwards, some philosophers, those we call, saints, or some monks, some friars, uh, they've have all contributed to to revelations as well. We just don't see them as big ones either, because
Yeah.
they were very, very localized, and they reiterate what was already taught by, let's say, Christ, or because the teachings got buried somehow and only showed up many, many decades or a few centuries after. But there have been many revelations. If we think of it, humanity
Wow.
has never been left alone for 2,000 years. If we think about it, it's about 1,800 years from Moses to Christ, and another 1,800 years. Don't, I beg of you, all of you out there, don't see 1,800 as a magical number. It's
Yeah, I
just
know.
a coincidence. It's
I know.
just a coincidence. It's a number.
Yes.
Okay? You give me
Yes.
two numbers and I can make a lot of
Yes.
coincidence show up from these numbers. Okay?
Yes.
It's not that. But there's about, let's say, 2 millennia from one to the other and another. Will we need another one in another 2,000 years? I don't know. And I think we should ask, I think it's a great question, Soraya. And I think we should all ask ourselves that, because in a way, it is kind of sad and embarrassing
It is.
that we need
Yes.
another revelation.
Yes.
Not if the new revelation is going to expand the knowledge, that is
Mm.
not the problem. But if we look at let's say when we think of Spiritism as the third revelation, a lot of what Spiritism does is reiterate,
Right.
reteach Christ's principles, because we have forgotten, or we have abused them, or we have not heeded them. And that's embarrassing to us, very embarrassing to all of us.
It is.
So I hope that if there is a new revelation, like a major one, in whatever number of years from now, I hope that it will be because we will have progressed so much more that we'll be able to understand other things that Christ could
Uh-huh.
even cogitate to explain to us, because we would just not understood, we would not have understood at all.
Yeah. At this time. Yes.
But I hope that in 2,000 years or 1,500 years or 10,000, whatever the number of years is, that we are not visited by spirits to tell us, well, let us go back to what
Yes.
Christ told you,
Oh.
I don't know, 5,000 years ago, and you completely forgot and you continue to forget or continue to ignore, because that will be, every year it becomes more of an embarrassment to
Yes.
us.
Yes. Mm. I understand that.
But think about it, right? We don't have to go that far away to see, even now with the difficult moments we're going through, um, how some individuals are completely oblivious to these teachings.
Yes.
Now that is a time for all of us to forget our petty little disputes
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
opinions, and
Right.
everybody, work together at least until we can go back to our petty disputes afterwards. But right now,
Right.
let us
Right. Right.
all be hand in hand,
Absolutely.
working to get out of this difficult moment. And what we see is exactly the opposite in some individuals. In
Yes.
some, I always like to remind everyone that next to these um, very ignorant brothers and sisters of ours, we also have those who are examples of dedication in
Yes.
every aspect. So we also see the good side. But the fact that we see the bad side, and sometimes bad sides in like the worst possible way, very, very extremists,
Right.
shows to us that we still have not understood or
Mhm.
applied the teachings of Christ.
Yes.
And that's sad and embarrassing, as I said.
It is. It is. It is very sad. But we can't give up. We have to continue, move forward, look ahead, and follow as much as we can Jesus' teaching.
Very well said. So, Raida, one of the things that all of us spiritists, actually anyone, whether you are a spiritist or not, whether you even believe in
Mm.
God or not, one thing that we should learn in life, never. I know that we don't like, and I agree, I don't like to say never or always, but
Right.
there are always an exception that proves the rule. I think this is one of them. I think we
Mhm.
should always live life without ever saying,
Right.
ah,
No.
everybody's doing, so I might as well just do it.
Oh no,
In
no.
other words, if you think that you can do some good, if you think that you can be constructive,
Yes. Yes.
be constructive. Do good. Do not look to the sides to
Mhm.
see if someone is doing it too, because in your hesitation, that hesitation is an evil in itself. Remember that the absence of love is in itself
Yes.
an evil action.
Right.
So we should do things. If whatever small thing we can do not think about doing Herculean tasks. Do not believe that we have uh, to fix the world. We won't. We are too small to fix the world.
Mm.
Period. Christ did not fix the world, and we are way below his level. However, we can fix one little problem for ourselves, perhaps, for a brother or sister, our neighbor, in that sense. And that is already good enough because we do it today. Tomorrow we are even eager to do it again and again and again. And by the time we realize, instead of just fixing one, we're fixing two, three, four, until we make charity second nature to us. What we just studied in the Spirit Spoke on Thursday will be so oblivious that we are doing charity that it will be natural. We won't even think about it. We'll just do it. We won't even rationalize that we are doing it. But it starts with small steps. I think this is the most important thing for us. Never to be discouraged by how much more others can do or are doing. And also not to go with the flow just because it's simpler or easier or perhaps less exposing of ourselves. No, if we think we can be charitable, let us be charitable. And if we can think we can do good, let us do good. Small amounts, it doesn't matter. Whatever we can do. Baking cookies, going to the supermarket for a neighbor who's now sick and can't go, right? Or sometimes just calling someone because they might be alone and they might be feeling a little blue, just to give them some attention. There are so many ways that we can be constructive, that we can be positive, that we can help. Oh, but we are not curing diseases. We are not feeding the homeless. We are not doing the. It doesn't matter. That's what we can do, and that is the consolation, the blessings for an affliction that is right at our door, right in our doorstep, and that is within our means and opportunity to solve, to abate, or even to eliminate completely.
Okay. Thank you, Julio. That's beautiful.
Right.
Thank you. Okay.
So,
continue.
go ahead.
Okay. The coming of the Spirit of truth. I have come as I once came amongst the wayward children of Israel, to bring the truth and to dissipate the darkness. Listen to me. Spiritism, as my word of old, must remind disbelievers that above them reigns the immutable truth, the good God, the great God, who makes the plant germinate and raises the tides. I have revealed the divine doctrine, and like a reaper, I have gathered into sheaves the good scattered amid humankind, and have said, come unto me, all you who suffer. However, ungrateful men and women have strayed from the straight and broad way that leads to the kingdom of my Father, and have become lost on the bitter path of impiety. My Father does not want to annihilate the human race. He wants you, through the help you give one another, both the living and the dead, that is, death according to the flesh, since death does not exist, to succor one another, and for the voice of the prophets and the apostles no longer to be heard, but instead the voice of those who have departed from the earth, proclaiming to go to you, pray and believe. For death is resurrection, and life is a chosen trial during which your cultivated virtues must grow and develop like the cedar. O frail humans, who are aware of the darkness of your minds, do not stray from the beacon that divine clemency has placed in your hands to light your way and lead you, as lost children, back to the bosom of your Father. I am too moved with compassion for your miseries, the great frailty, not to extend a sure hand to those wayward unfortunates who, seeing heaven, fall into the abysses of error. Believe, love, and meditate upon the things that are being revealed to you. Do not mix tares with the good seed, utopias with the truth. O Spiritist, love one another. This is the first teaching. Educate yourselves. This is the second. All truths are found in Christianity. The errors that have become rooted within it are of human origin. And here beyond the grave, which you believed was nothingness, voices cry out to you. Brothers and sisters, nothing perishes. Jesus Christ is the victor over evil. Be victors over impiety, the Spirit of truth.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So, Jesus tells us, came as once he did to the wayward children of this planet. And because the first and second revelations were brought to us by a person, one individual, one spirit, I should say, actually, they are more localized. So this is why it says here the wayward children is Israel. This, of course, means that It was the place where Jesus was. Not that only those in Israel were wayward children. We were wayward children wherever we were in those days in the world. But Jesus did not have the ability to take an airplane and fly to give talks and preach and educate everyone everywhere. So do not see that as a point in geography, a point in the globe that it was necessarily worse than any other, but remember or remind yourselves that it's because the first and the second revelations were brought to us by a spirit, a reincarnated spirit, in this case, incarnated spirit as for Jesus, in one particular location. We see with the first revelation a different approach. It is more administrative. It is more of disciplinarian type of revelation. There is nothing wrong with it. And by disciplinarian, it's because we needed discipline at the time. Moses could not have talked about universal love for a crowd, for a people crossing the desert, going back to the promised land, what they believe to be the promised land, because it's the belief that is important. And individuals who were actually, straying from, moving away from the path of the truth, the path of goodness. So he had to be more of a disciplinarian. Jesus comes many, many centuries afterwards and builds upon that, builds upon the idea of a single God, on the absolute respect to the Father. Father here meaning the God, the single God. But then Jesus modifies a little bit, if you allow me, it's very poetic. It's not the persona of that God. And it moves from a God that could be sometimes vindictive or very stern to a father that is always giving his children, its children, I believe is better. A father that is always giving its children opportunity after opportunity to improve themselves. It's a loving father. It is not a father that is disciplinarian anymore, because discipline means that it comes from outside in. When you are a disciplinarian, you impose your discipline. Now the Father, the God of Christ, is a God that says, my Father is the one, and it's here on the third line, who makes the plant germinate and raises the tides. In other words, biological or not, this is the Father who has created everything. Nothing, from the simplest plant even to the physical thing of the tides, of the movement of the tides, nothing operates that has not been ordained, created by my Father, by God, the supreme being, the supreme creator. So, but this God has created the idea of cause and consequence and has allowed us to evolve towards perfection in our own way, according to our own time, if you want, or to our own ideas. This God gives us opportunity after opportunity because it sees that the whole point is for us to reach perfection, not when. Because God already sees us there. Since God is neither present, past, or future, but all of them together. God already sees us as perfect. We are the ones who have to reach that point. So God allows us the opportunities to reach this perfection on our own terms. It's a welcoming, gentle Father. Whenever we go through a difficult moment, it's like we said before, these are the consequences of our actions, not the actions or the wishes of a vindictive God, a vengeful God. Quite the opposite. It is the same Father that gives us the opportunity, that actually gives us the strength and courage to face the difficulties so we can grow and move forward in our progress towards that perfection. And then we see, especially in the second paragraph, that we continue to move away from all of this. Ungrateful that we are, men and women, we are, because of our pride, our unbridled ambition, our vanity, our envy, we move away from all of this. And we take the path of impiety. And then the Spirit of Truth tells us, Jesus is telling us, Christ is telling us, I'm sorry, that the Father, God, does not want to annihilate the human race. No. Why would a creator want to destroy its own creation? It would be petty, to say the least. And it would be also a confession of having created something that was not good. But then if you are God and you are perfect, how can you actually create something that is evil? So the Father, God, does not want to destroy the human race, because God sees the human race reaching the angelical states and even going beyond. We don't even know what is there, but we know that it doesn't end there. It should not end. Actually, we should always be growing, improving, perfecting ourselves. So we are here to learn, but we have them on the other side to assist us. Let us pray and believe, which it says at the very end of this paragraph. Let us raise our voices towards them. They are the ones now speaking to us from the other side, telling us, pray and believe. That everything we go through here is just a trial, and it's something that is not permanent. And we have to develop ourselves so that we can reach that perfection. Then it says, all frail humans. Frail because we have very little faith. The smallest things disrupts us, breaks our balance, our equilibrium of mind and heart, of soul. And it's saying, is begging us not to stray from the beacon of clemency, from the beacon of the divine creator, from the light, which is charity, which is universal love. Those are the embers and the fuel that keep that light, that beacon alight, so we can see it wherever we are. No matter how dark the tunnel of our difficulties is, it is always there, burning at the end of it, so we know which direction to take. So we can go back to the bosom of our Father, go back to the path that leads to God. And then Christ says something quite moving. The last paragraph of this page here. He is so moved with compassion for our miseries, our lack of faith, our frailty, that he cannot let us suffer in silence. He's there with us, trying to prevent us from falling in the abysses of error. This is telling us that there is always guidance, assistance, help. The question we have to ask ourselves in the silence of our own minds is whether we are listening to the claxons from the spiritual realm. If we are heeding the messages, heeding the pleas that come from the other side, all the way from those who, like us, once loved us in this lifetime or in past ones, and like us are not that developed morally and intellectually, but who have already developed a love for us that manifests itself even beyond the grave. From these all the way to the spiritual benefactors, to our spiritual guardians, all the way up to Christ himself, and of course, God, the creator of all things. And is asking us to be very careful. And the last sentence is rational faith. Do not mix utopias with the truth. Think, judge, analyze, dissect. A life without examination, a life without evaluation is not a life worth living. We are here to use our abilities. And to use our abilities means that we have to evaluate everything around us. So we can always correct, because we are bound to move away from the straight path. But we can make minor adjustments in our course if we keep evaluating our actions and the impact these actions have in our surroundings, in other people. This is where it says here, do not mix utopias with the truth. Utopias come when we desire more than what we need, when we want more than just what is necessary. Yeah. Utopias come from an unbridled ambition. To have ambition is healthy. Do not get me wrong. It's very healthy to have ambitions, because they are the driving force for us to reach a goal, to conclude, to create and accomplish things. But unbridled ambitions, unchecked ambitions, becomes extreme and derails us, moves us way from the path towards perfection. We are also allowed to feel pride. Of course, we can feel pride on a job well done, feel pride on how we behave, because that again is a fuel for us to continue on the right path. We need a pat on the back, and especially a pat on the back that comes from ourselves. That is the definition of pride. But when we speak of pride in this sense, we mean the constructive aspect of it. The pride that is not mixed with prejudice. The pride that is not mixed with unbridled, unchecked ambition. A pride that is simply a satisfaction that we receive by observing how much we have been able to progress. If we do this, if we evaluate our actions, we will not mix utopias with the truth. We will not fall prey to the pitfalls in life of vanity, for instance, of jealousy, of envy, because we will understand what we are able to accomplish, and what we have accomplished and what still is left to be accomplished. We will take the pride, that good pride, that constructive pride, that satisfaction on what we have already done, use that to fuel our motivation to finish the job. And throughout the process, because what is important is the journey, not the destination. Throughout the process, from point A to point B, we'll keep our compass pointing to the north of charity, of universal love. What does it mean? It means that as we try to accomplish the end, the means that we use to accomplish that end will not berate, destroy, will not steamroll over any one of our brothers and sisters. It will be means, it will be forms of behaving, of accomplishing things that are constructive, that are honorable, that are going to be in line with the teachings of our Master. Ron, you can move to the next page. And finally, in the last paragraph, is just a plea for us, again, universal love, to look at everything. But there is one particular point that I really like about this paragraph. Love one another, first teaching, but educate yourselves. That's the second. Sorry, it says first there, but it's second. And when Soraida read, she actually corrected it, which was good. Educate yourselves. This is the second. It means that you can't just have this airy-fairy idea of loving this and loving that. No, we have to educate ourselves as well. We have to learn. This is what I said, a life not evaluated, not examined, is not a life worth living. You can love as many people as you want, but after a while, that love will derail into an insincerity because you do not understand things. Love is important. It is important. But we also have to educate ourselves. Let us be very careful with the word educate here. I'm not asking you to take a course in calculus. Okay? This is not it. Or to take the genetics classes, genetic classes. It's not that. That helps. It's a form of knowledge. But the education we speak of here is the maturation of knowledge. It is understanding concepts of life that come from life and knowing how to apply them, knowing how to deal with them, and knowing why one does it that way and not another. The rational faith. It is only through education through educating ourselves that we'll be able to move away from utopias and keep our compass always pointing towards the good things, the constructive things. It is very, very important for us. This is a plea for universal love first and foremost, but also for education. It is through education that we'll find the truth and we'll understand them. Because if you tell me the truth, it's not truth to me until I can understand your words. I can go beyond the words and see what they truly mean and implement them in my life. Otherwise, all I am doing is repeating your words or the words of somebody else. So when it says here, all truths are found in Christianity, they have been there the whole time. Have we learned them? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. I should not ask if my neighbor has learned them. I can only ask, I'm only allowed to ask if I have learned them. And I am the only individual capable of truly, sincerely answering that. The truths are there. God did not veil the truth to us. It's everywhere, pristine for anyone to grasp. We are the ones who have to do the work, the homework, to be able to appreciate them and internalize them. For that, we need the education. The love one another will bring the respect for everyone and everything. And the respect for everyone and everything will bring us the humility that we need to say to ourselves, to admit to ourselves, this I do not know yet. Let me study it. Let me educate myself about it. And this is why Christ tells us, love one another is the first teaching, then the education. Because as we love one another, we develop the respect for everyone, for everything even. I would even move it, remember St. Francis of Assisi used to talk to the blades of grass, to the leaves on the trees, to the flowers in the meadows, to the animals. So this love one another, of course, when we see the pronouns, we immediately just think people, but it's everyone and everything. That will bring us to a state of humility. And we need the humility to separate what we have already truly learned from what is still to be learned. Because then we can focus our attention on what we're still lacking. And when we do this, remembering that this life is very short, but that we should not be discouraged by this, because nothing perishes, we can continue the work later. Whatever difficulty we have at the moment, whatever disadvantages we have at the moment, they will not be there forever. And we are always using these opportunities to learn, always, and will continue. Because Christ, being the representation for us of divine love, is always a victor. A victor that does not impose himself, does not impose penalties, but is always asking us to move towards him, to go to him. Okay?
Hi, Julio.
Hi.
Beautiful.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Renato.
Uh, deep breath. It's more of a philosophical. I don't even know if it's a question, but while you're explaining perfection and creation, and not when, but we all will be perfect one day, and I was thinking a lot of stuff that now we learned in the past, and Jesus, and the stage of our planet right now, and think about happy worlds and perfect worlds, and one day we don't need more. Well, it's so much going on, but my point is about the thought that crossed my mind was, we have Jesus as a perfect spirit, and from what we study, he's been around since the creation of the planet, even before humans or whatever. He was already participating on all this. And I'm not saying that he's the only perfect spirit, that takes care of this planet, but from what we study, he's the reference. And nowadays in this planet we have, I don't know how many trillions of spirits incarnate and discarnate, and just the sake of for the argument, you have one perfect spirit taking care of everything. Not only the spirits itself, but the whole thing. And once we say that we are all going to be perfect spirits, and when you look of what it means to be, of course we don't understand. Of course we say that words and human words trying to understand something that we don't, but it seems that what I was trying to understand is you have one perfect to trillions of imperfect and creation all together in one responsibility. And trying to understand the whole creation, let's imagine that all these trillions of spirits here become perfect, and we all be doing some sort of let's put for the lack of a better word, work like Christ. I look at like, oh my God, so I have no idea what the creation's God, what it is. We study that we have planets and galaxies and everything that we have not, we're not aware of it. So at our level, the dimension of the creation and to be perfect and everything that is still being ahead of us, it looks like it's just a handful of perfect spirits. You know what I mean? Because you don't need much of them to take care of a lot of stuff. And then when we all achieve that perfection, and let's say where we're doing the same job as Christ right now, let's use the word job, and then you kind of can imagine how, again, for the lack of the better word, big is the God's creation if we all assume doing the same thing as Jesus. So I was just here, thinking, of course we don't have, we can expect to understand that, but just to share with you and maybe see what your thoughts about the creation, the imperfection, and the path that's lying ahead of us, the dimension of all of this that now God has created.
So, a few things. According to our beliefs, Christ is for us a perfect spirit. The level of perfection that we can grasp. But he's not the only one. And there are also levels of Christs. In other words, it's the same as say that they continue to evolve, to learn. Otherwise, they would be condemned to an eternity of repeating the tasks, everything, without any motivation. And that in itself would be disastrous, would be completely counterproductive. The problem is that we cannot even grasp Christ properly, can imagine above it. Now, Christ is the governor of the planet, has been since its inception, since the building of our solar system. But he has many below him that are far removed from us in terms of their moral and intellectual superiority that assist Christ in this task. It's just that we don't have names for them, or we don't know their names, but it's not Christ and then this huge vacuum, this huge gap, and then all of us here, perhaps with the mentors just a little bit above us. No, There's a huge gradation of many, many spirits. And we have about your 21, 22 billion spirits, incarnates and discarnates around planet Earth at the moment. And yes, it may look like it's one spirit, Christ, trying to look for, let's say, for simplicity, 20 billion spirits, but it's not right like that. There's a lot more that are doing all the intermediate steps. And if we read the André Luiz collection in particular, we see examples of that there are those a little bit above, and there are those a little bit below. We see, for instance, in the transitory house of Fabiano, for instance, we see in the transitory house that we have the director, then we have the subordinates, then we have the guards. So we have spirits. We have this plethora of spirits, this huge group of spirits occupying all the positions. Just because you are more morally evolved than the average citizen of planet Earth doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing only administrative jobs in the spiritual realm, because there all jobs are important. Unlike us, they don't have the prejudice. You may be mopping the floor, or you may be the director of a house of assistance, and it's considered a job, and it's considered a job that is as equal and as important as any other job. So we have to always remember these things. When we think of the creation, it's difficult. And to debate it, it becomes very philosophical and very counterproductive, because our knowledge is mediocre at best. And we have something called the containment problem. If you have a marble and you now put the marble inside of a shoebox, you can speak of the marble being inside of the shoebox and not outside of the shoebox. When you take the marble outside of the shoebox, you may say it's outside of the shoebox, but perhaps it's still inside the room of your house. Or you may say it's inside the house. Or you may say it's in your neighborhood where you live, or in the county where you live, or in the state where you live, or in the country where you live, in the continent, in the planet that you live. You see where I'm going with this? You always have a containment that is larger than the object you're talking about. We don't have a containment for the creation. When we say that the creation is one, it means it doesn't matter where you look, it's the same creation. It's one creation. But we would like to have the creation inside of something, because in our experience in the physical realm, everything is inside something else. Even if the container is, let's say, the planet or the solar system or a country, but there is a limit. We can say until this limit is one thing, beyond that limit is another. We don't have that for the universe. We don't have that for the creation. And that is a problem for us to grasp. The magnitude, the sheer size of it. What we should do, my guess is, I'm not against the debate, the exchange of ideas, but that should be a philosophical debate, a philosophical discussion, special for it. What we should see in Spiritism, as in general, is what can I do to make the little surroundings in which I live better? Because I cannot philosophize to my heart's content. If I continue to be mean, if I continue to be disrespectful, if I continue to be dishonorable in my attitudes, in my behavior, I make my life miserable and the lives of all of those immediately around me as miserable as mine. So can we point the telescope of our curiosity to the infinite? Yes, we can have debates like that, philosophical debates, but let us keep our grounds on planet Earth all the while. That means let's keep our feet, both feet firmly planted on the floor, and let us look around ourselves first. Before we philosophize, let us ask ourselves if we are doing the best that we can to make our surroundings a little more livable, a little more consoling. That's the topic for today. A little more engaging, so that everyone, or every brother and sister, finds in us a friend as opposed to an enemy. That's my 2 cents for this particular. But I see where you're going with it, and I think about it as well. And like I said, I'm not against the thought, the curiosity, but let us not forget our priorities. That's the most important thing. And asking the question doesn't mean that you have misled your priorities, that you have mixed priorities. No, it's very natural to ask.
Thanks, Judah.
Okay.
Okay. Shall I continue?
Yes, please.
Number 6. Okay. I have come to teach and console the disinherited poor. I have come to tell them to raise their resignation to the level of their trials, to weep, for sorrow was sacred in the Garden of Olives, but also to hope, the consoling angels will come to wipe away their tears. Workers, trace out your path. The next day, restart the trying journey of the day before. The labor of your hands supplies earthly bread for your bodies, but your souls are not forgotten. I, the divine gardener, cultivate them in the silence of your thoughts. When the fall of your repose sounds, when the thread of your life slips through your fingers, and when your eyes are closed to the light, you will sense my precious seed emerge and germinate within you. Nothing is lost in the kingdom of our Father, and your sweat and miseries form a treasure that will make you wealthy in the higher realms, where light replaces darkness, and where the most unclothed among you will perhaps be the most resplendent. Truly I say to you, those who bear their burdens and help their brothers and sisters are my beloved. Instruct yourselves in the precious doctrine that dissipates the error of rebelliousness and teaches you the sublime purpose of the human trial. Just as the wind sweeps the dust away, may the breeze of the Spirit dissipate your jealousy toward the wealthy of the world, who are often the most miserable because their trials are more perilous than yours. I am with you, and my apostle teaches you. Drink from the living fountain of love and prepare yourselves, O captives of life, to someday freely and joyfully throw yourselves into the bosom of the one who created you weak so that you can become perfect, and who wills for you yourselves to kneel your pliable clay so that you may be the artist of your immortality, the Spirit of truth.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
So it's another plea, a plea that speaks of our difficulties, but also of the consolations that are next to it. Consolations that may be as a consolation itself in this realm while we undergo the difficult moments, and even in the spiritual realm, because there are certain types of afflictions, those who are not afflictions of the flesh, of course, that continue over there. But this consolation is next to us during the moment of difficulty, during the period of difficulty. But then there is not only the consolation, but the rewards. I actually am not very fond of the word reward because it always feels like a bribery to me. But it's not that there's anything wrong with the word. It's just my personal, unfortunately, my personal bias against it. But the reward in the sense that the consequences of our forbearance, of our humility, of our resignation, of our patience, but the consequence primarily of our forbearance is that we will learn from the difficult moment. We will enrich ourselves if we allow ourselves to experience the vicissitude without complaints against God, without blasphemy. A lot of individuals get this wrong. When we say that we should face a difficulty, a difficult period, a difficult moment, it does not mean that we are not supposed to cry, that we have to be stoic, almost like an automaton. No. Or that we cannot open our mouth and say, oh, I feel pain. The pain is too much. No. What we say is that we should not have revolt in our hearts. That is what is key. If the pain is too much, yes, cry. That is why the tears are for. If the pain is too much, we can convey that to a friend, to a loved one, someone we trust. Not actually behave as a victim all the time. No, that's different. But yes, if you are in pain and someone looks at you and see that you're completely white as a sheet because it's so much pain, you cannot say, no, I feel like $1,000,000. Of course not. That would be an insincerity. That would be a lie. And a loved one, a friend, a true friend, will see right through you. So you can say, yes, the pain is taking the best of me at this moment. It's a statement, not an act of rebelliousness, of revolt against the Creator. You're not blaming anyone or anything. You're just stating a truth, a fact. So the forbearance is looking at the difficult moment and saying, I have to learn something from this. There is a what for behind it, and I have to find the answer to this what for, not for the why me. You will never find the answer for a why me. And even if if it were possible, you would be very disappointed with the answer. Because you would see that the why me is simply the cause that you created sometime in your past. And you would see that it's all on you, on your shoulders, the responsibility of the moment that you're going through right now, or any one of us is going right now. So it's best not to ask why me. One, because we already know in Spiritism what the answer for that question is. The answer to that question is. And number two, because we learn nothing from it, from learning what we already know. We're not gaining anything. So let us see what we can do to find the answer to the what for. So what can I learn from this moment? We have, as I said, the consolation throughout the period of difficulty. And we know that our forbearance will allow us the treasure in heaven. That it says here, we'll be wealthy in the higher realms, where there's no darkness anymore, no vicissitudes. And where the ones of us who are most distressed, afflicted, will be the most blessed. Not because it's a reversal of behavior. No, it's not that. Because the ones that were afflicted, the ones that were distressed, and learned from those difficulties,
Mm.
who have created the tools, implement them in themselves, never ever to behave in such a manner that will lead to the same difficulties in the future. And this is why it says in the last paragraph, truly I say to you, those who bear their burdens and help their brothers and sisters are my beloved. Jesus is not excluding those who do not love their brothers and sisters. Christ is not excluding those who do not bear their burdens, but the ones who do bear their burdens approximate themselves to Christ. It's the natural consequence of their actions. Those who assist others by placing others ahead of themselves also approximate themselves from Christ. This is what it means that they are his beloved, because it's like when you interact more with one person than others and you become friends. It's the natural consequence of the interaction itself. It's not it's not even about that person being better than the others, because we know that there are friendship among criminals. It just means that that individual with whom now you have an acquaintance and that is beginning to establish a friendship is someone who partakes of your ideas. So now let's make this huge leap. If we are now partaking of the concepts of Christ, we are truly improving ourselves. So Christ is not saying here that is eliminating those who do not follow him or his precepts, simply saying that we, the ones who do, who follow his examples, will be approximating ourselves much more to him than the others. And this is the reward, the treasure in heaven. We have the Spiritist doctrine that assists us to dissipate the errors of the rebelliousness, that teaches us that the what for that is more important than the why me. That says, forget about the why me, you already know the answer to that. That says, do not worry if you cannot finish your work, the accomplishments in this lifetime, you will have another one. You do not die, and everything that you are continues to exist after the death of the physicality of the physical body. And in another lifetime, you will get another instrument, another physical instrument to pick up wherever you left off and just continue. Nothing is lost in the kingdom of the Creator, in the kingdom of God. Nothing is lost. Everything is a continuation, is a continuum. And we have the spiritual realm, we have the spiritual benefactors, we have Christ himself to assist us every single moment of our journey. All we have to do is prepare ourselves. As it says there at the very end of the paragraph, God is it's so magnanimous in its justice, is in infinite wisdom, that it has created us simple and ignorant, and has given us the opportunity that we should mold our pliable clay, the clay of our essence, poetically, of course, since the essence has no physicality. God has allowed us to mold our pliable clay, the clay of our essence, so that we could say at the very end, I am perfect, and I have perfected myself through my own work, my own sweat. So we will be the artisan of our immortality. We will be the ones responsible for our perfection. Granted, with help, of course. But that's not the point, because we can have all the help we want. If we don't do the work ourselves, The help is there, but it won't do much good to us. So we will be the artisans of our immortality. We'll be able to have created the perfection in us, which is the greatest gift God has given us after our own creation.
Okay. Should we stop here? Already went over a little bit. Thank you, Julio. So we have in 4 weeks, 4-weekend time, we have our Spiritist Symposium. You probably are starting to see on our emails the announcement for the symposium. Will be a 2-day event, 3 hours on Saturday, 3 hours on Sunday, with some lectures, some roundtables, some discussions. It's going to be a very interesting symposium. There is one part special for youth on Saturday. So please check your emails if you have any questions. You can ask us here. We are going to continue our studies this week with our regular schedule, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. Again, happy Mother's Day for all mothers. And we are going to invite Elmo to do our final prayer today. Elmo, can you do it?
Yeah, sure I can. I don't want to unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, Elmo.
Ah, okay. So let us open our hearts and our minds to be receptive to the blessings that our spiritual benefactors are offering to us with great affection. Let us open ourselves to our beloved Master Jesus Christ, accepting his invitation, taking comfort on his consolation, and like the sun whose light permeates the entire planet, our beloved Master send his peace and his love to each one of us, to each home, to anyone who is open to receive him in their hearts and minds. And for that we are grateful, beloved Master. Giving thanks to God for the entire week of blessings they received. Asking to be inspired and guided by our benefactors, by our spiritual guides, to put to good use all the blessings they received here. Like the green leaves of the creation, who transforms the light into oxygen and air, into fruits for all of us. Let us receive the light of the gospel and transform it into the exercise of charity to the best of our abilities. May you be guided, protected, stay safe in health, and be able to enjoy our Sunday encounters next week. And permission to close this meeting. So be it.